Um, as Christy introduced us, I'm Katie Panzica, Product Marketing Manager, and John Swisher, the Director of Solution Development. And our primary focus for the development team is within the healthcare payer space. So the highlight of our webinar today is to focus on one of our solutions that we've developed, being our contracting solutions, and the things that we would like you guys to know about our solution and how it can and will benefit you. So the first thing we like to talk about is the concept that we've gotten to market with our solutions is basically you get going quickly with a complete solution. When talking with clients and prospects, we know when it comes to software solutions, the deployment of those solutions after you've decided what solution you want can take a really, really long time. We've tried to minimize that by really being the industry expert for you and talking with a lot of healthcare payers and understanding the struggles that they're facing within their contracting process, understanding how they're doing it today in a manual world, maybe some of it's semi-automated, and really taking a lot of the steps that we can automate and using our software solution to do so, and then creating a complete end-to-end solution that we can go ahead and deploy that in your environment, and you can start working right out of the gate, which is why we call them accelerated solutions. So they are ready to deploy business applications with minimal customization required. So what do I mean by that? Well, we know that everyone's process is not going to be the same, so there's going to be some tweaks that you may need to make, and we allow that. But for the majority of the solution, it's already configured, so to speak, about 75 to 80% all the way there. However, if you saw our solution and you liked what you saw, we could deploy it at 100% of the way it's built. But again, having the flexibility to change fields and things like that, we do leave that up to you to make it more customizable to you.
Yeah, and I think a couple of examples of that are just nomenclature. So what one organization calls one thing, maybe the same thing, another group of folks may call it something else. Or you think about some organizations are moving forward in more of an evergreen contract type or have a much different negotiation or approval method in the departments those go to. And that's a good example of those configurable points that we've left open and will customize to each organization beyond, that 75 to 80% complete infrastructure and a skeleton of the solution.
So what are some of the items that are built out of the box when it comes to our contracting solution? Well, we have the approval process already built out. We do have it set as a custom approval process because, again, there might be extra individuals that you need to approve contracts based off your rules or regulations, the type of contracts or things like that. But for the most part, the approval process is already baked out for you. We have a template of libraries, or a library of templates that we'll get into here shortly, but allowing you to have all your contract language in one place. The process flow is already designed for you. So from the time that you decide, hey, I want to contract this provider, to the time you get that signature is all mapped out, as well as contract versioning. So the solution's keeping track of these versions for you versus you doing an eye-to-eye makeup of that. Automated notifications already pre-built into the system, as well as tasks and approvals. There's a signing integration piece already baked in, as well as a share-based integration, so having a little bit more security around sending these contracts back and forth to your provider. And then reporting dashboards already built in. We know reporting is a big thing for individuals to understand where they are at in the process. So all these items that I'm mentioning here are already part of the solution, where we don't have to worry about going in and doing a deep dive discovery of that process.
Yeah, if you think about how these work together, so that custom approval process based off of contract object attributes or characteristics, if you will, but also the ability to ad hoc add approvers, or require input from different business units on the team. The ability to send all those out automatically, let those users know when it's their turn to review those via automated notifications. And going back to that contract versioning, being able to see very easily what has changed on that document during that negotiation process. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, the ability to approve or send back those documents as part of that contract packet right from your email makes this an extremely automated and streamlined solution.
So now that we've kind of talked about the overview of what an accelerated solution is and the easy deployment method of these solutions and why we've created it. I mean, it is that ease and flexibility to get going sooner than later when it comes to these solutions, because we know customers tell us that we needed a solution yesterday and they can't wait another 6 months to a year to get this started. So the other highlighted piece that we want to talk about today is our template library. And what this is a central location for all of your contract language. So we know we've heard from many individuals that maybe based off the contract type, different amendments, even simple changes to logos on contracts are shared across the organization. They're on different individuals' laptops. They're on different file servers somewhere. So if you're not pulling the right contract or the right template or even the right logo, it can set you out of compliance. It doesn't look good from an organizational standpoint, especially if its language is not correct or up to date. So we've designed the solution in a way that we have one central library for all those templates. So when one change is made, it's making that change across the board, and your users may not even know that that change happens. They just know that the next contract that they have to create is going to have the right language, verbiage, icons, logos, you name it, it will be there.
Yeah, you think about what a lot of folks are doing today, and you see version 15 of a contract template that started a couple years ago out on SharePoint, and you have users downloading those to their local machine, and they're making updates to that for negotiation. They're using expired language. We're having a tough time figuring out what has changed over the course of those number of years. This solution will track that as well when we talk about those revisions. We can go back at any point to be able to compare today's contract template to one that we may have sent out a year, 2, 3, or 4 years ago, and very easily be able to highlight what those differences are and what the delta is between the two.
And there is no limit to the amount of templates that you're storing within this solution.
Not at all. Nope.
So our third point we want to address is, just like I mentioned with the template library being in one place, all of your content is in one place as well. So you're not dealing with spreadsheets anymore or other applications when you're looking for related contracts, amendments to the contracts, even your provider data. I'm not saying that we're not going to use spreadsheets ever again, because actually we can leverage spreadsheets with different lists you might have and actually upload them into our solution. So let's say you received a report from Quest Analytics for the adequacy of your network, and maybe they gave you back a report of specific providers in a certain location that you need to add into your network. We can leverage that spreadsheet, upload it into our solution, and begin contracting those providers. So that's not what I'm saying here. It's just saying that we're not managing that whole entire process on different spreadsheets or different databases, because we've created one platform, one solution with a really nice working dashboard that John will get into of this entire process.
Yep, and the other thing that everyone fears is, hey, who changed this spreadsheet last, or who broke the database, or who deleted the spreadsheet? We need to call the backup team and pull that open. That is no longer a concern within the solution. And what you're seeing here is the end user point of view. So think of a contract object or a container. And as we kind of go through the different portions of the view here, you can see the main contract details. So for example, who the provider entity is that we're dealing with, what's the template for that contract we used, who's the contract administrator on our end. And as this contract goes through the execution process, we'll see those key dates start to populate as well. As we move over to the top right, a nice user graphic to be able to show us where we are within the contracting process. So you can see that red dot up in the top left. And right now, we're strictly in the generation stage. That little pencil lets us know that we're about to generate that contract and then send it out for any negotiation if necessary. And as we pass through those, you'll see those highlight in green. So it's a real quick process indicator, just opening up to know where we're at within that process. And if we look at the rest of the screen, we're looking at, first of all, those work items. So when we talk about different contract types or different provider types, you have complete control over the required activities or work items that those contract admins are to complete throughout this process. And those will update as it moves through the different stages, and we'll track all of that. We talked about dashboards and reporting on those processes a little bit earlier, but this lends a lot of insight into bottlenecks within your process or users that may need a little bit of help. And as we go down to the bottom and we look at our different documents, so we're collecting all of the documents that we generate within the solution. So not only are we generating your contracts, but your addendums, your attachments, your rate sheets. If another solution is already doing that, we're importing them in here. Any correspondence that we may have via email or fax, whatever with that provider, we'll track all of that right here. And at the appropriate time, build out that contract packet for you based off of all of those different documents.
And the fourth point that we want to talk about is really about visibility. When we have all our data in one central location, that means we have better access to that data and we have better insight to that. Reporting, we know, is a huge thing when it comes to healthcare payers, and understanding where your contract is within the process is a big deal. And if we take it to more of a paper-based process and you have different contracts on different people's desks, you're essentially in a waiting game. You don't know when that contract is actually going to hit to signature, especially when you are waiting to make sure that your network is complete and you are meeting those compliance adequacy regulations, and that your members have access to the providers they need. In a paper world, it's really hard to get that information. But with a solution that's managing the entire process, you can easily see where everything's at. So from the time a contract has been created to the time that a contract is in the red line stage, to negotiation, to signature, then awaiting credentialing, we have dashboard reporting that allows us to easily see where those contracts are at. Then we can make decisions based off of that input, or even drill down right into a specific contract. We can even see what the workload is within your organization. So as different people that are managing these contracts are working on more and more, we can move work from individuals and see who's performing better or slower or needs assistance, or if there are bottlenecks within the process by leveraging these type of dashboards.
Yep, no one looks to a new solution to know less about their process, right? Since we are managing the entire process, you're completely aware of your inventory and your obligations, as well as very simple things like reallocating that work. No one manages to go their entire life without taking a sick day. And when we need to push stuff through, sometimes we may need to allocate that work. And another great example of being able to lend insight from a high level. So this is a great tool for your executive level to just take a quick glance and see where we're at based off of inventory and process in just a couple of minutes.
So the next point that we want to talk about, because we've been talking a lot about data and where is this data coming from. So having the ability to have these different integration options if you need them. I mean, if it's not required, you definitely don't, but we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to these integrations. So we are not saying that our solution is going to be a replacement for your provider database. So when John was walking you through that workspace, you saw a lot of provider data there. Well, we can do lookups from other applications and pull that into our solution and update that on a real-time basis as well, so that all those applications and this application have the correct information and that we are populating these contracts correctly.
Yeah, and what we've seen a ton recently in this space is a strong adoption towards Salesforce, for example. So we're integrating with Salesforce more and more. And if we think about, the contracting process, what usually occurs prior to that? It's the recruiting process, right? And if we think of those recruits as almost like prospects and then eventually customers, that's where a lot of organizations are really starting to use Salesforce in this area. So very much during that recruiting process, if we say, hey, now is the time to start moving forward with that prospect provider, we can manage that recruiting process within our tool or kick off the contracting process right from Salesforce into our tool, so it's a seamless transition. And again, maybe it's just your source of truth for provider data. What we'll do is just tap into that and present it to the end user for the purposes of recruiting or contracting within our application, and maybe even tie our application into Salesforce. So whether it be a hotkey or an embedded window to be able to see the status of something, all of those are very commonplace within the industry.
Other integration points within the solution are with Microsoft Office. So all of our contracts are generated through Microsoft Word. And as you can see on this slide back here, even the redlining aspect of this is managed within Word, so we can easily see those changes that have taken place. If you're not using a tool like this process can be very, very time consuming to see what changes, edits, additions, deletions have been made by both parties if this is not keeping track. So we're essentially keeping different versions of the contracts as you go through the negotiation process right here within our solution. And as well as leveraging Outlook, we have the flexibility to then push the approval process out through Outlook to get sign off for a contract, approval or rejection of certain changes within the contracting process.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we really drive the point home through Microsoft Word. Obviously, once this gets electronically signed, we can save it in PDF, but in that negotiation process, there may be some times where we're adding language, modifying, removing that language. And just to really reiterate what Katie had illustrated, is that very rarely are you going to be able to have someone say, okay, I put on the track changes and all that. We just need to be able to compare, and that's kind of what you see on the left-hand part of the screen, is comparing that original contract that we sent out versus the one that we received back from that provider. And we can compare revision 1 and 2, revision 1 and 5, revision 4 and 5. There's no limit on the revisions throughout that negotiation process.
Another integration point that we offer is with external sharing. So we know within the healthcare world that Security is a big deal to a lot of individuals, and that's no different when we talk about the contracting process. So with a tool like ShareBase that we offer, it allows us to collaborate with external parties and share this document without sending it into the outside world, like emailing the document or even having to print out the contract and send it to them. It's a secure link that's sent out that your providers would then log into, access their contract, review it, save it, and send it back in-house.
Mm-hmm.
So having even that flexibility within a solution like that to tie in additional security as it relates to these contracts is a huge benefit of having an automated solution.
Yep. No one really wants that to remain inside of their email, and something that often gets overlooked is simply the size of contracts and emails. Some mail services offer a maximum attachment size. So depending on the size of that contract and addendums and attachments, it can get fairly large. This is just a nice, easy solution for your customers, the providers, to be able to interact with their contract documents in that negotiation phase.
And the last integration piece I want to highlight today is with our integration with DocuSign. So having the ability to electronically sign these contract documents, it's already built into the solution. So we're really eliminating the whole promise of paper and a wet signature. We're just doing this all electronically. Everything is secured. Everything is stamped and signed. We have a complete record of who signed it, when it was signed, through this integration piece. Again, when we start talking about these integration options, they are optional. So if this is an integration point you don't want to use, it's not a requirement, but it gives you that added flexibility to have electronic signatures within your contracting process.
Yep. I mean, nobody likes printing something out and signing it and then scanning it and sending it back. So the integration with DocuSign is going to manage that for you automatically. It's actually going to know where to place those signature cues right there on the document for you. So you don't even have to place those. It's going to read where those signatures are supposed to go and place them there for you. And not only can they be signed by your provider, but also executed internally once they've gone through their credentialing process, all within DocuSign. And then the best part about it is I don't have to go out to DocuSign as the contract administrator and check on the status. Part of that integration is going to bring that document back in and notify me as soon as it's been signed or executed by either party. So there's no more waiting. There's no more checking. It's taking care of all of that for me.
So the next piece I want to touch base on is the ability to track tasks, notes, and approvals. With any process, there are compliance pieces involved. We know that certain items need to take place for the next item can take place. And having the ability to track those tasks and know that they are being completed and executed by your users is huge. So having a solution that basically notifies you of what that next task is going to be, and having the ability to force a user to execute that task before the next step can be taken is a huge piece of our solution, as well as having the ability of applying notes and having approvals. So notes are beneficial even as it relates to different tasks. So having kind of a collaborative environment to talk to other users and let them know why you made changes that you did or what needs to be done next, or even applying notes to contracts to let them know that, hey John, I actually need you to relook at this section because there was language made. So having that ease to see that whole entire picture and know that the contracting process is actually being executed in the correct manner is another key piece of our solution.
Yeah, so if you look here, here's one quick example of 2 users that we need to review this contract, and based off of their reviewer type, they may have a different part to review within that contract. So the system's automatically going to track when it was sent to each user, for approval. When they did approve, any comments that they may have added, and if it was approved or not, we need to go back through the process. But one other part I really want to stress here is that these can be pre-configured by contract and provider type, but also approvers can be added in an ad hoc manner. And another important part of this is the sequence. So you can see in this shot here that Riga is the first and Zach is the second approver. We can have multiple approvers approve at the same time in more of a concurrent fashion, and also in combination with sequential. So our level of customization within our approval process is very flexible.
And like I was mentioning with the notes, John is really talking about the approval side of this, but you see there's that middle section where comments for notification. This is very basic language in this example of please review contract, but here's where we can get more in depth of notifying these individual reviewers of maybe different sections of the contract that need a closer eye. So having that, again, flexibility within the solution is key.
Mm-hmm. So when that email, that automatic notification, Katie, automatically makes its way to your next in line in that approval process. This is where you were talking earlier about that integration with an Outlook and what that looks like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is where I get that email and I can either approve or reject, but I can still access the document right from within Outlook. So essentially Outlook becomes my new contracting solution versus going into the workspace that maybe other individuals were working in.
Yep, and the ability to pull that Word document right up from here and add any comments directly into the document the same way you would natively within Microsoft Word all exists right here within the solution.
Yep.
So when we're talking about, hey, we want to be able to identify a bottleneck, maybe we know that Zach always takes twice as long to approve a document. We need to be able to identify that. That's where we're tracking all of those different approval times, whether it be by user, department, and we can really zero in on, whether it's a problem provider type, problem contract type, problem approver, to really start to own and streamline that process a little bit further.
And the last piece I want to talk about is actually going beyond contracting. So obviously that's what we wanted to talk about today, but we know that in the healthcare payer space, it doesn't start and end with just contracting. Yes, that's how we get our network going, but there's other aspects to that process. And at CareWorks, we've designed other accelerated solutions that are on the front end of that and as well as on the back end. So from a recruitment standpoint, we know that contracting entails a recruitment process. If you win new business in different states, you obviously have to get a certain amount of providers in different areas with different specialties. So having the ability to manage that recruiting process in an automated fashion, we know is key, and that can connect right into our contracting solution on the front end of that. And then credentialing. All providers need to be credentialed before a contract is actually truly signed and that provider is put into your system. So having the flexibility of having another accelerated solution to automate that. And again, surrounding all of these processes we're talking about is we knew compliance is such a big thing. So being able to easily manage that and prove that you do have the tools in place for these processes. Other solutions that we have within our provider network or our provider platform are even site surveys. So whether you're bringing on a new provider and you need to go out to that provider's location, perform that site survey, or on the other side where maybe you're getting a lot of grievances from your members about sites of providers that you have to go and visit and execute these surveys.
An internal corrective action.
Correct. We have solutions for that. And then we have, you have a ton of providers within your network. Well, managing the outreach. to those providers, sending out those attestations that need to go out and sign, but also pushing out information to your providers, finding out if they want to join different options that maybe you as the plan are now offering those specific providers. So easily having a tool to automate that process, go out to those providers, keep it electronic, so you then get responses back and then manage that data. So with everything that I've said, right, it's a complete tool in managing your provider network. And it allows you to keep track of all your data. It gives you great flexibility, insight into how your network is performing, and eases a lot of those pains and bottlenecks you might have without an automated solution.
Yeah, so by managing that process, what are those ultimate goals that we're trying to hit? We're trying to be able to correct possibly an inadequate network. We're trying to make the onboarding and credentialing process as simple and as painless and streamlined as possible, both for your employees and the providers. But then also, once they are a provider within your network, making those attestations and then contract renewals as simple and as painless as possible for both sides of those surveys or contracts.
So I know we are a minute over what we promised, but we'd like to open it up to any questions that anybody might have. And if there are no questions, like Christy said, this webinar will be recorded. Please feel free to share it with other individuals within your organizations, even those that aren't involved with contracting, even just to hit on those last two slides about the complete provider platform package. And if you have any questions, you could always reach out to us here at CureWorks, and we'd be happy to address any of those questions and concerns. We do have, I think, one question as it relates to onboarding. Just in general, how does onboarding work as it relates to a provider?
Sure, that's a great question. So as we know, contracting is only one part of the process, and typically as part of that contracting process, once we've hit a certain point, we're going to kick off a credentialing process. We didn't discuss that today, but look for that in the future webinar. Once they've been credentialed and that contract is executed, there's a lot of things when we talk about onboarding a provider that are very common to onboarding any employee or contractor, really. So making sure that there's an action item sent out to HR, to payroll, getting them any of their paperwork or allocated on the computer systems. That's the final part within the recruiting and contracting solution that will kick off all of those onboarding processes as well. Good question.
Great. And then the other question was actually about the integrations. It was just to confirm that those integration pieces are in fact optional. And yeah, the answer is yes. With any of those integration pieces, you can use them or you cannot. And it's, again, our solution is very flexible. So if there's any other tools that you use, again, we have that window of customization, so we can be able to go ahead and integrate with maybe some other tools that you may use in-house to make sure that this solution is complete for you.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Well, we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.